Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only, Ray the Flying Squirrel here, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars for the Super Nintendo / Super Famicom version, as we still currently playing for it right now. Because of the forms of the Nintendo Switch remake, it should be on its way, and because of that, I think we've almost to the point about the fact that we've almost got roughly about 2 months left until that particular remake decides to able to release. So, anywho, last time we've essentially did manage able to show off some more extras here and there, including that we did somehow manage to win back into Booster Hill because of the forms of the catching beetle kind of mini game, and on top of that we also did manage able to check out Crate Guy's Casino, and it's just for the sake of the forms if you can able to actually get yourself some more frog coins in that particular location, and that's besides the point. And also we did somehow finally make our way to the returning back into the forms of Bowser's Keep ever since the beginning portion of the game, and since about the fact that everything else in Bowser's Keep has been changed up significantly. So, relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that we did somehow, as usual, battle some more enemies, and especially noticeable, we did somehow manage to tackle through only one of those door challenges at the moment, which as a result we've already did manage able to win through the quiz challenge and stuff like that. And on top of that, I think it's, to be more specifically, it's like a puzzle challenge, so even then though, and on top of all that stuff though, we also did manage able to make our way to the halfway point in terms of the forms of the battle course segment. So although originally I was expecting to try to able to actually wrap things up everything in a battle course segment, but of course due to time constraints we have to able to actually do it on the next part, which as a result we're currently able to actually going to be doing the continuation portion of that particular battle segment until right now. So because of that though, is that today for this video is about the fact that not only we can able to continue things on during the forms of one of those door challenges, but also about the fact that I think straight to the point that we've almost nearly at the end for the likes of Bowser's Keep before we move on to the final area in the game. So as a result, and as you can tell, we've somehow managed to get ourselves our next level up for Mario. So as a result, we're now on to level 21. So that should be all pretty good, especially concerning about the particular point. Again, it's a good thing we did somehow manage to keep on leveling up for ourselves, assuming of course about the fact that if you well, it's hard to explain really, because I know for a fact that for one thing in mind, that it's been a very long while since we actually last played this game, especially concerning about the particular point that obviously you already know that we finally managed able to finish up with the forms of not only Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, but also with the forms of Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance. And because of that though, recently now is about the fact that Sonic, he's somehow now finally returned back onto the forms of Sonic Frontiers now, and because of that though, hopefully he should be able to actually almost completely done with the forms of Sonic Frontiers before we move on to the forms of the next couple of Let's Plays for Sonic the Hedgehog, like for instance with Sonic Superstars once that game comes out, or potentially speaking we might have to save that up during at some point until next year in 2024, because straight to the point about the fact that at this point in time we've almost nearly at the end of 2023, although despite the fact that we're still on the forms of September after all. So even then though, speaking of which though, is about the fact that today's date of course there is the 4th of September today, in some cases in 2023 today. Naturally speaking though, is about the fact that I believe we've only got about 18 days to go until the physical version of not only for Pikmin 1 but also for Pikmin 2, or should I say the physical version of Pikmin 1 plus 2 is about to be able to get released. So even then though, I kind of believe we're actually getting very close to that particular point. So anyway, so here we actually got ourselves the forms of the greatest weapon for Geno as far as I'm concerned, and that's what appears to be by the forms of the Star Gun. So even then though, that should be all pretty swell as far as equipping it as far as this is concerned. Now for those of you who probably don't know already, this is actually my second attempt for able to actually do this particular recording session, and as far as I'm aware, because my commentary, it feels so awkward during the forms of the first attempt of this particular recording section. So hopefully this time around though, it won't be nearly as bad as the forms of how it does on my first attempt of this particular recording session. So even then though, hopefully that seems to be the case. So anyway though, so since that we finally managed able to beat in Battle Course 1 for the sake of the forms of one of those door challenges, so now we're going to be moving on to the quiz challenge. So because of this though, yeah, the first one, all you have to do is basically about the fact that you need to put up with the forms of the correct answers, and if you make your way to the very top of that particular staircase, obviously about the fact that you can able to move along to the next segment. So even then though, and I believe the next segment is about the fact that you need to count out how many of those barrels does it show. In fact, kind of think about it though, this particular segment does remind me of one of the most infamous missions in Junior forms of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, where basically though is about the fact that you have to ask one of the townspeople, specifically Arstros, I think is what it says anyway. That basically does about the fact that you need to count how many boxes they contain in there, and then you have to deal with so many loading times, and because of that though, that's the reason why I decided to able to refer to as one of the most notoriously infamous missions during the forms of in Sonic 06, not only for the likes of Sonic, but also for Shadow as well, because every time whenever you do manage to able to think about the correct answer, that basically though, you have to go through so many loading screens, and my god, did that get old very fast, especially noticeable because of the forms of the actual technical problems, for the sake of the forms of Sonic 06. I'm hoping about the fact that Project 06, fan-made remake of the forms of Sonic 06 were able to actually fix that issue, but I highly doubt it though, mainly because they most likely focusing on, you know, all the stages, not the forms of the actual Soliana town, as far as I'm concerned, but even then though, that must have been said something, so anyway though, so yeah, another thing I should probably explain about this as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact that recently, it wasn't until when it gets to the point until on the forms of the 12th of September, we might able to actually get ourselves the next Apple event. It should be up and doing at some point until on next Tuesday. But unfortunately though, it's about the fact that I don't think we can probably talk about it right now until specifically on the 14th of September. At least as far as I'm aware, that maybe that Sonic were able to actually mention more about it once he's going back onto the forms of Sonic Frontiers at this point. But even then though, because aside from all that particular stuff though, as you probably would expect, that for the majority of this week, I think we might able to consider, but by saying this, is that we might able to actually wrap things up everything for the likes of the forms of Super Mario RPG for this week. Because of that though, I just want to get this thing and move along, and on top of all that stuff that was about the fact that we're miles able to say this right now, until next month anyway, that we're about to be preparing ourselves the next month off series, so, or a marathon of any sorts. But then again though, I can't exactly tell you what that is though just yet, mainly because, you know, want to keep this a super top secret. So even then though, and it looks like we've got ourselves the rock candy right here, so I might as well get rid of that regular mushroom, because who needs those specific normal mushrooms for now on, because obviously thanks to Princess Toadstool does manage able to have herself the healing spells and stuff like that, or healing special moves for that matter, so anyway, so we now go into the forms of door number 3, and as a result, we're now onto the forms of the platforming challenges, and this is what about the fact that with isometric platforming gets it a little bit more difficult, especially noticeable during the forms within that particular segment coming up, that basically though we have to deal with the forms of very, very tight jumps, and especially noticeable with the forms of specific jumps you have to make, and then if you made that particular mistake, that as you saw, that I've obviously already made one mistake from earlier, that's what appears to be about the fact that if you dare touch the lava, basically though is about the fact that as you could probably can tell, what if you managed able to get started with the forms of those platforming segments, it does say you got about 10 chances left, so as a result, if you failed one move, basically it decreases by 1. So meaning about the fact that you can't afford to able to mess up multiple times, because if your chances runs out, basically though you get kicked out of the actual challenge and you have to start all over again. So yeah, because of that though, luckily there's no time limits or anything else like that, although unlike any forms of certain questions, for the likes of the forms of the quiz challenge and stuff like that. So even then though, because chances are though, you have to be so specific with all that particular, you know, timing and what have you. So even then though, you have to be so cautious with that. Although especially noticeable if you're trying to go after those, you know, chests, like I was expecting to grab some already, well, best of luck really, because especially noticeable during that specific point that, imagine if the Nintendo Switch remake is about to be coming out, and then obviously about the fact that if this happens on you, well, basically though is about the fact that it will take you a lot of tries, assuming of course about the fact that they'll try to able to like, even though it's hard to explain for this point, because I know for a fact that the last time we actually heard about, you know, the Super Mario RPG remake was in June forms within, you know, the June Nintendo Direct announcement. So even though hopefully we're able to actually hear some more information about the forms of the Switch remake of Super Mario RPG during at some point in the midway portion of September, or perhaps even later on in September. But who knows, because obviously about the fact that, oh, okay, so it looks like we stumbled across into the forms of a lot of staircases, and oh god, we got ourselves some barrels, I say. I mean, what is this, like a Super Mario RPG version of Donkey Kong? So basically we have to jump over those barrels, just like in Donkey Kong, and once we make our way to the top, it seems that Chained Kong is responsible for this, and as a result, we can able to actually get ourselves, what else? And next, I would say it's the next weapon for, or let's say, Princess Toadstool or something like that, because it did say something related to Slap. So, but honestly, I don't think I can probably able to actually equip that, like Super Slap right here. So I think we might be okay with Frying Pan, because Frying Pan is awesome, especially noticeable that, gee, no wonder why, during forms of a charged smash attack for the likes of Princess Peach, managed to got a Frying Pan during the course of it ever since in Super Smash Bros. Melee and onwards. So, and something tells me, since that we've now made our way to the save point, that also means about the fact that I think something tells me there's going to be a next boss fight. So even then though, well, straight to the point, we're also able to do that right now. And exponentially, since about the fact that we've somehow managed to complete it, 4 of those door challenges out of 6, so I don't think it's possible we can able to do all of them all in one go. So I could assure you the game expects you to do like, you know, 4 door challenges instead of all 6. So, but I know for certain for one thing about the fact that we can't go back to that particular segment, but something tells me about the fact that we have to able to continue our progression first before we're able to actually get back into the forms of that particular door challenges at some form or another. So yeah, I think that should be all set for the likes of the team members for right now, because as you can tell, we've somehow managed to got not only Mello, but also Gino as well. So even though it looks like we stumbled across into ourselves Chemic, or Magikoopa to be more specifically. So even though here's Magikoopa. Magikoopa does have himself 1,600 HP, and he drops about 10 coins if you defeat him, and I believe it gives you about 30 experience points, assuming of course if my numbers is not exactly the most accurate. So, but at least I did somehow manage to able to look it up and what have you, so I guess that makes it a little bit more obvious than ever. So anyway, and eventually every once in a while though is about the fact that he will start able to summon the Yoshi's Egg of all things, and because of that though he decides to able to summon the random enemy as far as I'm usually concerned with that stuff. So I wonder he's probably going to be summoning into. Wait a minute, that does look familiar, doesn't it? Oh gee, it looks like we're actually going to be face up against with Jinx for, presumably for the 4th time, but ultimately speaking though is about the fact that this is actually a clone of the forms of that particular Jinx himself. So yeah, basically it's about the fact that despite the fact that we did somehow kick his butt, not only once, but 3 times due to the forms of a dojo segment. So because of that though, yeah, when it comes to the forms of Jinx clone, that he does have about 320 HP, but it does not drop any experience points or anything else like that, including coins as well. So very understandable, because obviously the main focus of this battle is of course trying to take down the forms of, you know, Magikoopa himself. Now at this point in time it's about the fact that we've almost running low for the likes of pick-me-ups, but at the very least though, once we get to the later battles throughout the game, obviously we'll also have to able to stick around for Princess Toadstool for the majority of towards the end game at this point, because of the forms of comeback, special move, and on top of that, group hug as well. So even then though, that pretty much takes care of the forms of Magikoopa. And since that we did somehow manage to deal with him, he somehow turned into a blue color scheme. So at one point he was actually red at first, but now he turns into a blue color scheme. So yeah, that's quite interesting, all things considered. And for some reason we got ourselves a Monster Town music, because something tells me it's about the fact that he's gonna be, well, I don't know about you, because again it has been about a couple of days ago since I've last played this game, but hopefully at some point during the forms of this week that we might able to actually say this, that we're able to definitely finish up this game. Although I was expecting about the fact that the actual timing of this is actually impeccable for the likes of the forms of life whenever we try to able to finish up this game completely. And as you can see, he did somehow cast a spell on that particular treasure chest, and because of that we can able to get insane amounts of those coins for that particular chest block. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool and awesome at the same time if you decide to able to actually buy some expensive items and armor and weapons and all that stuff. So but even then though, and something tells me if we go into the door on the left, we can able to bump into Croco yet again, although he does manage to offer us something for, you know, for the goods this time. Like, for instance, they've now added in not only 1, but 5 different armors, like Hero Shirt, Prince Pants, Star Cape, as well as Heel Shell and Royal Dress. So, I'm only going to be purchasing not only Hero Shirt, but also with the forms of Prince Pants and Star Cape, because I think at this point in time is that with Heel Shell, and especially noticeable with Royal Dress as well, they are both outclassed thanks to the forms of, not only for the likes of the forms of the work pants for Bowser, but also with the forms of Lazy Shell for Princess Toadstool, because obviously we still need able to keep that Lazy Shell for Princess Toadstool, just in case for higher defense, for the sake of the forms of, you know, benefit for the doubt when it comes to likely for not only using group hugs all the time, but also with the forms of comeback for reviving certain party members and stuff like that. So that's the perfect example of why I decided able to actually go for that specific solution. So, but anywho though, something's worth noting for is about the fact that, like I said before, is about the fact that until likely or so for 8 days time, presumably speaking, that the Apple event is going to take place in Junior forms within the 12th of September. So maybe, who knows, we might able to actually hear about the forms of iPhone 15 that a lot of rumors and leaks keep on about. Maybe, but then again though, we'll have to wait and find out, and during at some point, whenever we discuss on that, during at some point during the forms of the midway portion of the forms of September, because at this point in time is about the fact that recently, not only me, but also Bubbles, Blossom, and Mighty, and maybe especially noticeable for Blue and Jewel as well, they are basically about the fact that we somehow more already packed up for the sake of the forms of, although for those of you who don't know, basically until next week there might be an uploading schedule break between the forms of not only the 11th of September, but all the way up to the 13th of September, just because about the fact that, tell you what though, once we basically completely done with the forms of Super Mario RPG, for reals, obviously I would definitely deserve a break, especially noticeable because it's been a fun journey, don't get me wrong, but usually most of the time though, the only problem I have with the game sometimes for me though is that, although for isometric platforming it might be tolerable in the beginning, but especially noticeable whenever we get towards the forms of the midway portion of the game, sometimes isometric platforming can be sometimes feels a bit tolerable, although other times though about the fact that sometimes it frustrates me, especially noticeable since we're now into the end game. Basically this is where the point that the fact that with isometric platforming in mind, that gets a bit, I don't know, difficult. So even then though, that might be saying something I suppose. So Although, relatively speaking though, I was originally trying to able to save my game before I able to continue my progressioning for the sake of time. But of course, about the fact that I somehow got distracted by the forms of other stuff worth noting for, especially noticeable because as you can tell, we've now switched over the different characters once again, because obviously I decided able to bring back, you know, Princess Toadstool, because Princess Toadstool rocks for the sake of the forms of healing, specials and all that stuff, so that's to be expected, so. And obviously with those enemies right there, as we've already dealt with for a moment ago, these enemies are known as Big Berterers. Big Berterer does have 350 HP, and it gives you about 7 coins if you defeat them, and on top of that, it gives you 35 experience points if I'm assuming so anyway, so. Well, this room seems familiar, especially noticeable because, again, we've already experienced this room since in during the forms of the beginning portion of the game, except now, rather than facing off against with Bowser this time around, so instead, we're about to face off against with a different foe. And something tells me about the fact that I believe once we deal with this particular fight coming up, I think we have to do with yet another one after this. So it's going to be one of those moments about the fact that you have to do 2 bosses in one run for the sake of the forms of this particular segment. So, but either way though, let's go in and fight against this thing. And as it turns out, his name was Boomer. So yeah, for Boomer, it does have 2000 HP, and it does not give you any coins if you defeat him, but it does give you 55 experience points. So yeah, best assured about the fact that we can now able to actually deal with a proper boss fight without needing to worry about, you know, trying to take down the chandelier, because unlike the forms of how it does it when we first got there in the beginning portion of the game, then we have to able to take down the actual chain for the likes of the actual, you know what I'm saying with the chandelier, because obviously if you deal with Bowser at first, then obviously he does have infinite amount of health, so even then though, at least at the same time though, it's about the fact that, well, despite the fact that Princess Toadstool keeps on giving you certain advice. So, either way though, let's go ahead and just utilize certain special attacks, and it seems about the fact that Peach got very lucky, or Princess Toadstool for that matter, because as I said before, the Lazy Shell is a godsend when it comes to the forms of not only for Mario's weapon, but also with the armor weapon, or in some cases the armor accessory, only for Princess Toadstool in mind, because obviously she's a white mage of the Final Fantasy stuff, so even then though, that's the reason why I've obviously wanted to bring this out, so. And it seems that Boomer is now turning to blue for some reason, which I'm guessing because about the fact that maybe the defense is a little bit higher, but still, regardless of such though, he's actually pretty easy though when you get the hang of it though, especially noticeable about the fact that if you do manage to get more level ups during that time, then you should able to actually kick his butt no problem, so. Anyway though, so there's also another explanation I should probably explain about this as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact that I'm afraid to tell you that I don't think I can probably able to go back into Sonic Dash for some time, especially mainly because the next character event for that particular game in mind, it appears to be we're going back onto Sir Lancelot, despite the fact that I've already managed to unlock Sir Lancelot ever since the journey forms of the last couple of months ago, mainly because of the forms of the actual character token event and all that stuff, despite the fact that we now need to deal with the character cards this time around though, instead of tokens, which, seriously, I'm not a big fan of the forms of that particular change around here, because that's how about the fact I feel like that unlocking certain characters in Sonic Dash every now and then starts to get a little bit tedious at points, especially noticeable. I totally get it about the fact that they're trying to able to recapitalize exactly the same formula for unlocking characters as the forms of how it does it for the likes of, you know, Sonic Forces Speed Battle, but at the same time though, it's just about the fact that I just feel like that I really do miss the actual character token events a lot more, just because they are plentiful, and on top of all that stuff though, it was actually pretty simple to able to get a grasp with, so. But there goes Boomer right there, so even then though, that might actually felt a bit kind of sad, but regardless of such though, we just want to get a move on, so. Oh yeah, I should also mention about this as well, before you take on, presumably for the next battle, basically though, it's about the fact that for what I found out, that when it comes to a game called Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, as far as I'm concerned, basically though, for whatever reason, on the Wii U gamepad setting, for the likes of the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, what I found out is about the fact that apparently the Wii U gamepad does not contain any specific features for the likes of that particular game, aside from the fact that it only shows us the actual, just nothing in general, which as a result, gee, no wonder why the Wii U is a massive flop at the end. So, but even then though, it still has some great stuff, don't get me wrong, like the fantastic selections of games, still, but that'll be a topic for a later time. So even then though, despite we actually got lesser amounts of experience points as I was expecting, but if you think this entire thing is about to be done here, well, as it turns out, we're not done yet. So because of that though, here we go on to, I would say is, without a doubt, is one of the hardest story progression bosses in my opinion, especially noticeable because not only you have to deal with one main part, but other 3 parts as well, making a grand total of 4 parts to attack with. So here we have ourselves Exor, the forms of the giant sword himself. So as a result, he does have, you know, as I said before, 4 main parts of this entire sword's body. So as a result, he does have the left eye, the right eye, and Neo Squid, which appears to be its mouth. So basically though, as you can tell, that you do need to be able to deal with all these eyes, because as you can tell, the actual main Exor itself, you know, with the forms of those 2 eyes at the top, you know, with the actual, like, the golden eyes as far as I'm concerned. Basically though, it did somehow manage to able to got protected somehow. So the only way you can able to deal with the forms of certain damage for Exor himself, we need to able to stun, not only for the likes of the left eye, but also the right eye as well. Well, I suppose it really doesn't matter, depending on what eyes you take down, because if both of those eyes will come back again, obviously the actual Exor thing decides able to get protected again. And I will say that about the fact that sometimes this battle might take a bit while to complete, mainly because about the fact that during the later turns and beyond, once you're able to actually stun not only one of those eyes, but also with the forms of certain parts of him, basically though, every once in a while is about the fact that the actual thing will get protected. So anyway though, as far as the forms of the status, for the likes of certain parts of the forms of Exor himself, Exor, as far as the forms of the left eye, as far as I'm concerned, he does have 300 HP, and it gives you 30 experience points, if I was assuming so anyway. And as far as the right eye, as far as I'm concerned, it does have 500 HP, and he also gives you 30 experience points if you deal with it. And as far as Neo Squid, as far as I'm concerned, as, you know, currently is actually opening its mouth, basically though, it does have 800 HP, and it actually gives you 40 experience points if you manage to able to deal with that. So yeah, that's basically it. And especially noticeable with the forms of Exor himself, he does have 1,800 HP, and it does give you 100 experience points if you finish him off, but it does not give you any coins at all, because obviously about the fact that I get the feeling that something tells me once we deal with him, that I believe we're about to be able to actually enter in something, so. But anywho though, there's another thing I want to address something right from the start, and that's what appears to be about the fact that apparently though, since about the fact that we actually now got ourselves some more, you know, gameplay footage of the forms of Super Mario Bros. Wonder recently, about the fact that we actually did a really great job with the forms of how the gameplay actually plays out to be, especially noticeable. I'm still very excited for the game still. But one thing I did not understand is that when it comes to Elephant Mario, all in mind, apparently though, Shigeru Miyamoto somehow hated the actual Elephant Mario's design in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I'm not exactly sure why that seems to be the case, well, despite the fact that I haven't exactly found the actual true article about it, mainly because about the fact that still, regardless of such though, I'm still very excited for the game still, especially concerning about the particular point that at this point in time, we've almost got into about 1 month left, alongside with the forms of Sonic Superstars as well. So seriously, that's going to be a ridiculous method of able to actually release not only Sonic Superstars, but also with Super Mario Bros. Wonder in 1 week. So quite interesting, all things considered. So But either way, I suppose I'm also able to actually address something as well. That's what appears to be about the fact that, well, exponentially speaking though, is about the fact that there was a game called You Suck at Parking on the Nintendo Switch that somehow confirms the release date, and that's going to be due out at some point in this month. I'm not exactly sure when exactly, because I haven't exactly found the true article about it either, but that's just mainly because about the fact that at this point in time I just want to focusing on that particular battle from now on, because again, sometimes it might take a bit of a long time to able to actually beat the likes of the forms of Exor himself, because obviously if one of his eyes decides able to regenerate it, basically it decides able to protect the actual main target itself. So even then though, but regardless of such though, it is quite impressive to be able to actually notice that how massive that sword can be, and despite the fact that it actually becomes alive. So even then though, because relatively speaking though, we have not seen him ever since in the beginning portion of the game as well, despite the fact that he did somehow manage to take down the bridge for able to actually access the Bowser's Keep. So yeah, better late than never I suppose, so we finally managed able to get in contact with him, so even though that must have said something. But anywho though, aside from all that stuff though, there's one last thing I want to address something about this as well, is that we're now entering into the week also about the fact that in the UK's country at the moment, we're now entering into the mini heat wave right now. So even then though, I'm also able to actually drink a lot of water during that time, and on top of all that stuff though, I need to be very careful of the forms of the extreme heat temperature at this point. So yeah, that's saying something I suppose. And we somehow entering its mouth, apparently, which as a result, we did somehow transport into, presumably, the final area in the game. So as a result, we're getting very close, folks. We are definitely getting very close. Although, we're not going to do this particular point just yet, though, because there are still some more content. I do need able to address something, because obviously about the fact that we can now able to actually get into that particular spring, which pretty much leads us to the forms of the world map. So thankfully though, we don't have to necessarily try to worry about trying to deal with the forms of two bosses again. So as a result about the fact that we can now able to go back to the previous areas whenever you wish. So even then though, yeah, that's saying something I suppose. So anyway though, so yeah, another thing I want to able to point things out as well, and that's what appears to be that, well, it seems to be more specifically that the actual rumors were true, for the sake of the forms of how the fact that officially the new Barbie movie has beating out the Super Mario Bros. Movie's box office right now. I mean, I was not expecting that. I mean, relatively speaking though, it's just about the fact that I just got no words to say about it. But even then though, regardless of such though, it's about the fact that at least, you know, they both still doing really well for its box office departments. Like, they somehow managed to make their way to $1 billion dollars for its box office department. So at least at the very least though, they both are doing super duper well. So anyway, oh yeah, there's also another enemy which I suppose I forgot to mention about. That's what appears to be by the forms of King Bomb. I believe it only appears in during the forms of the Magikoopa boss fight as far as I'm aware. Well, despite the fact I believe that was the I don't know, the only enemy I somehow missed out on. So, yeah, I'm not able to look it up at some point. So, but either way though, that'll be for a later time I suppose. So, even then, oh yeah, there's also another thing I want to address something about this as well. I know I keep saying that line a lot, but as a result, about the fact that apparently though, that when it comes to the forms of, you know, superhero themed films and stuff like that, which are, you know, Daredevil Born Again, and on top of that, Ironheart and Wonder Man, they are all going to be delayed indefinitely, mainly because the studios continues to refuse to pay with certain writers and actors fairly. So because of that though, yeah, it's going to be one of those struggles when it comes to likely getting its releases during that specific time. So yeah, it's kind of feels a bit all over the place right now with all these particular films have been delayed indefinitely, especially noticeable because there's a lot of strikes going on. So So as you can see, we're going back into Bowser's Keep presumably for the final time, because obviously about the fact that we can now go back into the forms of those door challenges, so just in case we can able to tackle through not one, but 2 remaining ones. But as far as I'm aware, those challenges with the actual door challenges are pretty much randomized each time whenever you go into the forms of that particular segment. So because of that though, they won't be a guarantee about the fact that, well, I don't think it's possible for me to be able to go into door number 1 or door number 2. So relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that we can able to tackle what number door we can able to focus on. So either way, though, that's saying something, I guess. So anyway, though, there's also the last thing I want to bring this up, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, relatively speaking, though, is about the fact that apparently, though, with that particular 5th rhythm game for the likes of the forms of, well, let's just say, for instance, with the forms of let's just say, you know, 5th rhythm, final bar line, specifically, you know, with that rhythm game for Final Fantasy and stuff like that. Well, apparently, though, it's about to be getting its DLC eventually at some point on the 1st of November in this year, which, what usually contains, to be exactly? Well, it might able to contain certain musical tracks based off from Final Fantasy 16 DLC tracks. So as a result, that seems kind of interesting. So, like, as a result, certain music they're able to contain, which there are My Star, Hide, Away, To Sail Forbidden Seas, Away, and Control, and let's just say Titan Lost, Equation, and The Riddle, Logos, Find a Flame, and finally No Risk, No Reward. So that was the only song selections they somehow choose for the sake of the forms of that particular DLC in mind. So anyway though, so with that being said though, I think we should probably end things off at this point right here. So join me next time for more Let's Play of Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars, is that we can able to tackle through the final 2 door challenges, and also we can able to decide to do the final few extras before we take on the final area in the game, and we're getting very close towards the end. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later fellas.